The mysterious human habit. Zaira had seen many strange things in her time as a researcher, but nothing compared to what she witnessed on Earth. She had studied different planets, different species, and their unique ways of life, yet humans confused her the most. They were intelligent, creative, and unpredictable. But what puzzled her the most was their strangest habit: sleeping. On her home planet, Varen, sleep did not exist. No one ever closed their eyes for hours and became completely unaware of their surroundings. The Varonians were designed to stay active at all times. Their bodies did not need rest. They worked, explored, and invented new things without ever stopping. But humans collapsed every night as if their bodies were shutting down. At first, Zaira thought something was terribly wrong with them. She watched from the observation room of the research facility as a human scientist named Dr. Carter suddenly leaned back in his chair, stretched, and let out a deep sigh. Then he closed his eyes. Minutes passed. He did not move. Zaira's eyes widened in shock. Was he dying? She rushed to the nearest human assistant, James, her assigned guide. "What is happening to him?" she asked, pointing at Dr. Carter. "Is he unwell? Should we call for help?" James looked at her, amused. "Oh, him. He's just taking a nap." Zaira tilted her head. "A nap? What is that?" James chuckled. "Sleep. He's sleeping. Humans need to do that to rest their bodies and minds." Zaira could not believe what she was hearing. "Rest? What does that mean?" James shrugged. "You know, to recover energy. We sleep for about 7 to 8 hours every night. Without it, we get sick, weak, and kinda stupid." Zaira stared at him, stunned. A species that needed to shut down for hours just to function properly. It made no sense. She turned back to look at Dr. Carter. His breathing was slow and steady. His body looked relaxed, completely vulnerable. Her mind raced with questions. Why would a species evolve in such a dangerous way? On many planets, there were predators that could attack at any time. How did humans survive if they spent 1/3 of their lives unconscious? For the rest of the day, she kept observing. As night fell, more humans stopped working, left their laboratories, and returned to their homes. Within a few hours, almost all of them were asleep. Zaira, however, stayed awake. As always, she was built for endless activity. But something inside her wanted to understand more. She accessed the facility's surveillance system and focused on one of the rooms where a human researcher, Emily, had gone to sleep. At first, everything was normal. Emily lay still on her bed, breathing softly. But then, something unexpected happened. Her body twitched. Her fingers moved slightly, her eyelids fluttered, and her lips parted as if she were whispering something. Zaira leaned closer to the screen. What is happening to her? She checked the human's vital signs on the monitor. Her brain activity was spiking. Her heart rate had changed. And then, Emily smiled in her sleep. Zaira's confusion deepened. She turned to James again. What is she doing now? Is she communicating with someone? James smirked. She's dreaming. Dreaming. Zaira had never heard of such a thing. What does that mean? James stretched his arms and yawned. It's like a story playing in your head while you sleep. Sometimes we see things from our past. Sometimes we see things that never happened. Our minds create whole worlds when we sleep. Zaira's heart raced. A story inside the mind. New worlds appearing just by closing your eyes. This was impossible. She stared at the screen again. Emily's expression kept changing. Sometimes peaceful, sometimes surprised, sometimes even afraid. What was happening inside her mind? Zaira had spent years studying different species, but she had never seen anything like this before. Her people never dreamed. They never needed to. They were practical, logical, and efficient. Their minds worked only when they were awake. But humans? Humans became more active while unconscious. A terrifying thought entered Zaira's mind. What if sleep wasn't a weakness? What if it was a power? Her people always believed they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. But what if they had missed something important? What if the reason humans were so creative, so unpredictable, and so capable of survival was because of sleep? A strange feeling settled in her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt jealous of a human ability. She had so many questions, and she knew one thing for sure. She had to find out the truth. The unbelievable discovery. Syra couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. The idea of dreaming, of a mind creating entire worlds while unconscious, was something beyond her understanding. It kept replaying in her head like an unsolved puzzle that refused to be ignored. For hours, she watched the human scientist, Emily, sleeping on the monitor. The tiny movements, the flickering eyelids, the changing expressions, it all seemed like something alive was happening inside her brain. But how? On her home planet, Varen, the concept of rest was unnecessary. Varonians had evolved to function at full capacity every moment of their existence. There was no need to shut down. No one ever closed their eyes. No one ever drifted away into a dream world. Their minds worked only when they were awake. And yet, here was a species that spent 1/3 of their lives unconscious, and they were one of the most adaptable, creative, and unpredictable beings in the universe. Syra needed answers. She marched through the research facility, searching for Dr. Carter. When she finally found him in the cafeteria, lazily sipping a cup of coffee, she didn't waste a second. "Tell me everything about dreams," she demanded. Dr. Carter blinked, still half drowsy. "Good morning to you too, Syra. I don't care about greetings," she said, pulling up a chair. "I want to know why humans dream. What is happening inside your minds when you sleep?" Dr. Carter smirked. "Ah, so you finally discovered the magic of human sleep, huh?" Syra crossed her arms. "It's not magic. It's biology. And it makes no sense." Dr. Carter took another sip of his coffee and leaned forward. "All right. Dreams are basically our brains processing information while we sleep. Sometimes we relive memories. Sometimes we create completely new experiences. Our subconscious takes all the things we've learned, all the emotions we've felt, and it plays with them." Syra frowned. "Plays with them?" "Yeah," Carter nodded. "It's like our brain is experimenting, trying out different ideas, making connections we wouldn't make while we're awake. That's why some of the greatest human inventions and ideas came from dreams." Syra froze. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice lower than before. Carter set his cup down. "Well, take the periodic table, for example. Dmitri Mendeleev, a scientist, was struggling to organize chemical elements. Then one night, he had a dream where the elements arranged themselves into a perfect table. When he woke up, he wrote it down, and bam, he had created something that changed science forever." Syra's breath caught. "A dream gave him that knowledge?" she asked. "Not just him. Einstein's theory of relativity came from a dream about cows being electrocuted. The idea for Google. A dream. The structure of DNA. Discovered because of a dream. The list goes on." Syra's hands tightened into fists. This was insane. "You're saying that humans advance their civilization through dreams?" "Not just through dreams," Carter corrected. "But dreams help. They let us think in ways we normally wouldn't." Syra felt her chest tighten. Her people had no dreams. No subconscious creativity. No sudden sparks of genius while unconscious. What if that was the reason her species never evolved beyond a certain point? What if they were missing a key part of progress, simply because they never slept? She felt a deep unease settle inside her. Her whole life, she had been told that Varonians were the superior species. Their minds were logical, their thoughts were clear, their intelligence was unmatched. But what if humans had something more? What if this strange, irrational process of shutting down every night was actually their greatest strength? She needed proof. The experiment. That night, Kyra returned to her quarters. The idea burning in her mind refused to let go. There was only one way to test her theory. She had to watch a human wake up. She found herself standing outside Emily's room, staring at the sleeping scientist through the glass window. The human looked peaceful, unaware of the universe around her. Kyra waited. Minutes passed. Hours. She kept her eyes fixed on every tiny movement. Then, finally, Emily's eyelids fluttered. The human stretched her arms, letting out a soft groan. Her eyes opened, unfocused for a moment. Then she blinked rapidly as if adjusting to reality. Then, something shocking happened. Emily grabbed her notebook from the bedside table and started scribbling furiously. Kyra's heart pounded. She rushed inside. "What are you doing?" Emily looked up, startled. "Oh, I just had an amazing idea. It came to me in a dream." Kyra felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of idea?" she asked slowly. Emily hesitated, then smiled. "A new way to analyze energy signatures in deep space." Kyra nearly collapsed. A scientific breakthrough, created while unconscious, while dreaming. Her whole body felt cold. She had spent her entire life awake. Never once had she allowed her mind to slip into a state like this. What if she was missing something? What if her species was missing something? For the first time in her life, Kyra felt a deep, burning desire to know what it was like. What if she slept? The thought terrified her. Her species wasn't designed for it. But at the same time, a strange sense of longing filled her chest. She wanted to know. She needed to know. And so, as the night deepened, Kyra made the most dangerous decision of her life. She was going to try to sleep. For the first time ever. And whatever happened next, she would never be the same again. The truth about evolution. Kyra sat on the edge of her research station's cot, staring at the cold metal wall in front of her. Sleep. The very idea was unnatural to her, something she had never even considered before arriving on Earth. Her hands clenched into fists. Why was she afraid? She had faced the cold depths of space, traveled through asteroid storms, stood on planets where gravity could crush a weaker being. Yet now, the simple act of closing her eyes and surrendering to unconsciousness felt more dangerous than all of those things combined. Because if she was right, if sleep truly was the secret to human evolution, then everything she had been taught about her people's superiority was a lie. Her heart pounded. There was only one way to know for sure. She adjusted the scanner beside her, programming it to record her brain activity. If she was going to do this, she needed data. Cold, scientific proof. Then, with a deep breath, she lay down, closed her eyes, and waited. Nothing happened. The silence stretched on. Her mind remained alert, processing the world around her as usual. She wasn't built for this. But she forced herself to stay still. She focused on the soft hum of the station, the distant beep of a machine, the faint vibration of the Earth's atmosphere pressing against the walls. Her breathing slowed. Her thoughts began to shift. And then, darkness. The first dream. A flood of color. A rush of sound. Kyra gasped as images exploded in her mind. She was standing on Varen, but it wasn't the Varen she knew. The sleek, metallic cities were gone. In their place, she saw towers made of twisting, organic shapes, glowing with energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. There were machines unlike anything she had ever seen, moving fluidly as if they were alive. Creatures roamed the streets, creatures she recognized. But they were different, changed in ways that made no sense. Faster, stronger, smarter. And then she saw her people. Not as they were, but as they could have been. Evolving. Changing. Becoming something more. Kyra staggered back, gasping. Her mind was racing. This wasn't just a dream. It was a vision. It was a world that could exist, but didn't. A world her people had been denied. And suddenly, she understood. Her species had never changed because they had never given themselves the chance to dream. They had stopped their own evolution without realizing it. Sleep wasn't a weakness. It was the key to becoming something greater. And her people had locked that door centuries ago. The awakening. Syra woke up with a gasp, her body jerking forward as though she had been pulled from deep waters. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled. The scanner beside her was flashing wildly. She quickly accessed the data, and what she saw made her breath catch. Her brain activity had doubled. There were new patterns forming, connections that had never existed before. Her mind had gone through a state of restructuring, adapting in ways she didn't understand yet. It had begun. A knock on the door made her jump. "Clara." It was Dr. Carter's voice. "Are you okay?" She hesitated. She wasn't ready to share this. Not yet. "I'm fine," she called back, trying to steady her voice. "Just thinking." He chuckled. "Well, try not to overheat your circuits. I was just going to let you know that I had a crazy idea last night. Came to me in a dream." Zara froze. A dream. She opened the scanner data again, staring at the readouts. She had been taught that intelligence was fixed, that her people had already reached their peak. But she knew, deep in her bones, that she had felt something change while she was asleep. And if she could do it once, what if she did it again? What if she unlocked something new inside herself? What if she was evolving? Her fingers tightened around the scanner. This was bigger than her. Her people needed to know. She had to tell them. But deep down, Syra already knew the truth. They wouldn't believe her. The conflict begins. Later that day, Syra sent a transmission to the Varen High Council. She laid out everything she had discovered, the data on human sleep and its effect on creativity, the historical breakthroughs that had come from dreams, her own experiment, and how her brain activity had changed overnight. She expected them to be curious. Instead, she was met with outrage. The council leader's voice crackled over the comms. "You have corrupted your mind with human habits, Syra." "This isn't corruption," she insisted. "It's evolution. We've stagnated because we've ignored this part of our biology. We need to. You will cease this nonsense immediately." The leader's voice was sharp. "Your assignment on Earth is for observation, nothing more. You will not experiment on yourself any further." Syra clenched her fists. "And if I refuse?" There was a long silence. "Then, you will be recalled." Her stomach dropped. Recalled. That meant forced removal. A complete shutdown of her mission. It meant being erased from the research program entirely. But how could she stop now? She had seen what was possible. She had felt it. If she went back, if she stopped experimenting, she would be turning her back on something that could change everything. Her species was trapped, and they didn't even know it. Syra took a slow breath. She had a choice to make. Follow orders, or continue down this path, no matter the cost. Her fingers hovered over the console. Then, slowly, she cut the connection. She wasn't going back. Not until she unlocked the full truth of what sleep could do. And if she had to risk everything to find it, then so be it. The experiment begins. Syra sat in the dimly lit lab, staring at the screen displaying her brain scan. The glowing patterns looked different from before, more complex, more active. It was undeniable. Her mind had changed, and it was because of sleep. She exhaled slowly, pressing her hands against the cool surface of the desk. The implications were terrifying. If what she suspected was true, then her entire species had been limiting themselves for millennia. They had believed they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. But what if humans were surpassing them, not because of superior technology or physical strength, but because of something as simple as sleep? The idea sent a chill through her. She needed more proof. One dream wasn't enough. She had to repeat the experiment. But there was a problem. She had no idea how to sleep again. The first time, she had forced herself into it through sheer exhaustion and curiosity. But now, her mind was too alert. Her body resisted the very idea of surrendering control. She needed help, and she knew exactly who to ask. The deal with Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter raised an eyebrow as Ira sat across from him in the research lounge. "Let me get this straight," he said, sipping his coffee. "You, an alien who never sleeps, want me to teach you how to fall asleep on purpose?" Ira nodded. "Correct." Carter laughed. "This might be the weirdest request I've ever had. And that's saying something." Ira didn't smile. "This is serious. I need to understand the process. I need to replicate it." Carter leaned back in his chair. "All right, humor me. Why are you so obsessed with this?" Ira hesitated. She couldn't tell him everything. "Not yet. I believe sleep might be an untapped potential for my species, something we lost long ago." Carter studied her for a long moment. "That's actually kind of incredible." He put his cup down. "All right, I'll help you." Ira straightened. "What do I need to do?" Carter grinned. "First, you need to relax." Ira blinked. "I don't know how to do that." Carter chuckled. "Oh boy. This is gonna be fun." The struggle to sleep. The next few nights were frustrating. Carter gave her a list of techniques: deep breathing, listening to soft sounds, focusing on peaceful thoughts. None of it worked. Ira's mind refused to shut down. Every time she tried to sleep, she became hyper-aware of her surroundings. She could hear the hum of distant machines, feel the temperature shift in the air, sense every tiny movement in the room. It was impossible. Carter observed her with amusement. "I've had insomniacs in my time, but you might be the worst sleeper in the universe." Ira scowled. "I am not bad at this. I am simply not designed for it." Carter shrugged. "Well, that's the thing. Maybe you are, and you just never knew it." That thought stuck with her. What if she was meant to sleep? What if her species had once possessed this ability, but had erased it from their biology over generations? The theory made sense. If humans had evolved to use sleep for problem-solving and creativity, then maybe Veronians had evolved to remove it in favor of constant efficiency. But at what cost? The first controlled dream. On the fourth night, something changed. Carter had instructed her to try a different method, one based on something called lucid dreaming. "If you go into sleep knowing you're dreaming, you can control it," he explained. "It's rare, but some humans can do it naturally. Others train for years." Ira frowned. "And you believe I can do it on my second attempt? Hey, you're a genius alien. If anyone can, it's you." That night, she lay down, focusing on the thought, "I am going to sleep. I am going to dream." She closed her eyes. And this time, the darkness came faster. She felt herself falling. Then suddenly, she was standing in an endless white space. No walls, no sky, just nothing. But she could think, she could move. She was inside her own mind. "This is impossible," she whispered. But then the space around her shifted. Images formed, blurry at first, then clear. She saw flashes of her home planet, the sleek cities, the glowing energy cores, the ever-moving people. And then, something new. A different version of Varen, one where her people slept. She saw them waking up stronger, smarter, with new ideas never thought of before. She saw them changing, evolving, advancing beyond anything she had ever imagined. This wasn't just a dream. This was a vision of what could be. A world where sleep wasn't a weakness, but a tool for progress. She gasped and opened her eyes. She was back in her quarters. The scanner beside her beeped rapidly, registering an unprecedented spike in neural activity. She had done it. She had dreamed on purpose. And the result was beyond anything she had expected. The realization. The next morning, Ira shared the data with Carter. His eyes widened as he scanned the results. Holy, your brain activity was off the charts. This is way beyond normal human REM sleep. Zaira nodded, feeling an unfamiliar sense of excitement. I believe my mind is adapting. Carter looked at her. Adapting to what? Zaira exhaled. To an ability my species forgot long ago. She had the proof now. Dreaming wasn't just a passive experience. It was an evolutionary advantage. And if her species could learn to dream again, they might become something far greater than they'd ever imagined. But there was a problem. Her people wouldn't believe her. Not yet. She had to find a way to convince them. And for that, she needed to go deeper. She needed to push the limits of what sleep could do, even if it meant breaking the laws of her own species. The first dream changes everything. Zaira sat in her lab, staring at the data on the screen. Her heart pounded as she analyzed the results of her latest experiment. Something inside her had changed. Her brain activity had skyrocketed during sleep, far beyond anything she had seen before, not just for herself, but even compared to human subjects. This wasn't normal. It was evolution. She leaned back, running a hand over her face. Her mind buzzed with thoughts, memories from the dream still lingering at the edge of her consciousness. That vision, was it just her imagination? Or had she seen something real? A version of Varen that had never existed. A world where her people had unlocked something greater. Was it a possibility? A glimpse of the future? Or something more? She needed to understand. She needed to go deeper. The experiment continues. The problem was control. Her first 2 experiences with sleep had been unpredictable. She had no control over what she saw, where she went, or how long it lasted. Humans dreamed instinctively. But for her, this was uncharted territory. If she was going to unlock the full potential of sleep, she had to master it. She had to train herself. And there was only one way to do that. Carter, she said, stepping into the human scientist's lab. I need you to put me under. Carter raised an eyebrow. Put you under. As in, sedate you. Zaira nodded. I need to see if forced sleep produces the same effect. If I can enter the dream state at will, I might be able to map my brain's reaction. Carter hesitated. Zaira, you're not human. We don't know how your body will react to deep sedation. That's why we'll monitor it. Zaira folded her arms. I need this, Carter. I need to understand what's happening to me. Carter sighed, rubbing his temples. You know, most people try meditation or a warm cup of tea to fall asleep. You want to chemically force your brain into a dream state. This is why I love working with aliens. Zaira smirked. Is that a yes? He groaned. Fine. But if you die, I'm blaming you. The induced dream. Zaira lay on the medical table as Carter prepared the sedative. The machines around her beeped softly, monitoring her vitals. Ready? Carter asked. Zaira nodded. Do it. A moment later, the world blurred. The sensation was different this time. Not a slow drift into sleep, but a sharp pull. Then she was there. But it wasn't like before. The dream space was no longer just images and flashes of thoughts. This time, it was real. She was standing in the middle of the city, Varen, but not as she knew it. Everything was alive. The buildings pulsed with energy, shifting in structure as if adjusting to the needs of the people. The sky was filled with floating platforms, seamlessly moving between destinations. She could hear voices, her people, but they weren't speaking in the monotone efficiency she was used to. Their words had emotion, depth, creativity. And then she saw herself. A version of her, walking through the city, speaking to a gathering of Varonians, teaching them. She was showing them something, a way to access a hidden part of their minds. This wasn't just a dream. It was a message, a possibility, a glimpse of what her people could become. Then the dream shifted. The city darkened. She turned and saw something that made her breath catch. A towering shadow, standing at the center of the city, its form flickering like a distortion in space. It pulsed with energy, but something about it felt wrong. Suddenly, the dream collapsed. Zara gasped, her eyes snapping open. Carter was leaning over her. "You're back. Took longer than expected. Are you okay?" Zara sat up, her mind still racing. What had she just seen? What was that shadow? And more importantly, was it trying to stop her? A warning from the High Council. The next day, Zara barely had time to process her experience before she received a direct transmission from the Varan High Council. They had seen her reports. They were not pleased. "Zara, you are going too far." The council leader's voice was sharp, controlled. "Your research was meant to be observational, not experimental." Zara straightened, her mind still fresh with the vision she had seen. "I have discovered something critical, something that could change the future of our species. You have to listen. You have been corrupted." The words hit her like a slap. "What?" she whispered. The leader's gaze was cold. "Humans are an inferior species. Their habits are not our future. You are risking everything by pursuing this madness." Zara's hands clenched into fists. "I am risking everything because the truth demands it." A pause. Then, "You will return to Varan immediately." The transmission cut. Silence filled the room. Zara exhaled shakily. They were afraid. They didn't want to know the truth. And now, they were going to stop her. Unless she beat them to it. The final step, the deepest dream. Zara knew she was running out of time. If she was going to prove her theory, she had to push further than before. She had to enter a dream deeper than anything a human had ever experienced. Carter protested. "Zara, this is insane. You're talking about overriding natural sleep cycles, forcing your brain into an induced hyper-dream state. There's no telling what could happen." "I don't care," she said. "I need to know what's at the end of this. What if you can't wake up?" Carter's voice was quiet now. "What if you go so deep, you'd never come back?" Zara hesitated. She had considered the risk. But the truth was bigger than her fear. If she turned back now, her species would remain trapped in a cycle of stagnation. But if she succeeded, she could unlock the next stage of evolution. She looked at Carter. "Then you'll have to wake me up," she said. Carter swallowed. "All right. But if this goes sideways, I'm blaming you." Zara smirked. "You already said that last time." She lay back on the table. Carter prepared the neural stimulation device. This time, when she closed her eyes, she whispered, "Show me everything." The machine activated, and Zara fell deeper than ever before. The crisis and the truth. Zara had always believed she was in control of her mind. But now, she was falling into the deepest dream yet. It wasn't like before. This time, there was no slow transition, no drifting sensation. It was an immediate plunge into the unknown. And as soon as she entered the dream, something was waiting for her. The dream that wasn't a dream. Zara stood in an endless void, the space around her shifting like liquid. But something was wrong. This wasn't like the dreams she had experienced before. Those had been chaotic, unpredictable, human. This felt structured, like it had been built. A low hum vibrated through the air. Zara turned sharply, scanning her surroundings. Then she saw it. The shadow. It stood at the edge of her vision, an unshaped form, pulsing like a black hole, absorbing the very fabric of the dream around it. Zara took a step back. "What are you?" The shadow pulsed again, and then it spoke. "You should not be here." Zara's breath caught. The voice wasn't like anything she had ever heard. It wasn't spoken in sound. It was inside her mind. "You're just a dream," she said, forcing herself to stay calm. "You're a part of my subconscious." The shadow flickered. "No, I am what remains." A cold chill spread through her. "What remains of what?" "Of what your people erased. The buried history of Varan." Zyra's pulse pounded in her ears. Her people had erased something. "What do you mean?" she demanded. The shadow pulsed again. The world around her began to change. The void dissolved, replaced by a city, her city. But it wasn't the Varen she knew. It was ancient. The buildings were different, organic and fluid, as if designed by minds that thought beyond function. And then she saw them. Varonians. But they weren't the same as the ones she knew. Their eyes were sharper. Their movements more fluid. Their expressions filled with emotion. And then she saw it. A sleeping chamber. Varonians lay inside, their bodies at rest. Dreaming. Zyra's chest tightened. Her people had once slept. Her people had once dreamed. But something had changed. The vision shifted again. The vibrant city darkened. A council stood at the center of a grand hall, surrounded by screens displaying neurological patterns. And then she saw the decision. The Varen High Council had chosen to remove sleep from their species. They had engineered their own evolution to remove the inefficiency of rest, believing that continuous wakefulness would make them superior. They had silenced the greatest power of their minds. And in doing so, they had stopped their own progress. Zyra gasped. They had done this to themselves. And now, her species had been stagnant for centuries. The shadow loomed closer. "You are the first to see the truth." The awakening. Zyra's eyes snapped open. She bolted upright in the lab, gasping for air. Carter was at her side instantly. "Zyra, what happened? You were under for twice as long this time." Zyra struggled to catch her breath. The dream. The vision. Her people had once had the ability to dream, and they had erased it. She gripped Carter's arm. "I need the records. Historical records. Everything humans have on early Varonian contact." Carter hesitated. "Kira. Now." He pulled up the files, scrolling through the data. And then, there it was. An old human Varonian treaty, dated thousands of years ago. And in one section, buried deep within pages of trade agreements and technological exchanges, a single mention of a Varonian experiment, the enhancement project, the removal of unnecessary cognitive functions, including unconscious rest cycles, to improve efficiency. Zyra's hands clenched into fists. The evidence had been there all along. Her people had deliberately erased sleep from their biology because they had believed it was unnecessary. But it wasn't unnecessary. It was the key to their future. She looked at Carter, her voice trembling. "They're going to kill me for this." The threat from the High Council. The next morning, Zyra's worst fears came true. She received an urgent transmission from the High Council. Their faces were grim. "Zyra," the leader said coldly, "you have violated our laws." Zyra forced herself to stay calm. "I have discovered the truth." "You have played with human corruption," the leader said. "And now you threaten the stability of our species." Zyra's hands clenched. "The stability of our species. We haven't progressed in centuries. We removed something vital from ourselves, and now we're weaker than humans because of it." A sharp silence followed. Then the leader's expression hardened. "You will return to Varen immediately. This is not a request." Zyra exhaled slowly. "And if I refuse?" The leader's voice was like ice. "Then you will be eliminated." The final decision. Zyra ended the transmission and leaned against the console. Carter watched her carefully. "I'm guessing that wasn't a friendly chat." She swallowed. "They've ordered my execution." Carter cursed under his breath. "Dan, you weren't kidding when you said your government doesn't like change." Zyra forced a bitter smile. "No, they don't." For a long moment, there was silence. Then Carter asked, "What are you gonna do?" Zyra closed her eyes. Her entire life had been about following orders, being the perfect scientist, the perfect Varonian. But now she knew the truth. Her people weren't superior. They were trapped. And she was the first one in centuries who had the chance to break the cycle. Her eyes snapped open. I'm going to prove them wrong. Carter grinned. Well then, looks like we got a revolution to start. The final decision. Zaira had always believed in logic, in precision, in the superiority of her species. But now, she was a fugitive. The High Council had ordered her execution for uncovering the truth. Her people had once dreamed, just like humans. They had once evolved with new ideas born from their unconscious minds. But long ago, they had erased that ability, believing it to be a weakness. And now, they were afraid. Afraid of what she had discovered. Afraid of what it meant for their civilization. Afraid of change. But Zaira wasn't afraid anymore. She was going to prove them wrong. Escape from Earth. Carter paced the lab, rubbing his temples. Okay, let's go over the list of things that could go horribly wrong. Zaira ignored him as she packed her research into a secure data drive. 1. Carter continued, holding up a finger. The Varen High Council is probably already sending warships to track you down. I'm aware. 2. He said, holding up another finger. If they catch you, they're not gonna just arrest you. They'll wipe you out. Poof. Gone. Bye-bye, Zaira. She zipped up the data pack and slung it over her shoulder. Also aware. Carter sighed. And 3. You still don't have an actual plan. Zaira turned to face him, her golden eyes blazing with determination. I do have a plan. Oh, do share. I'm going to return to Varen. Carter's mouth dropped open. You mean the same Varen where they literally just ordered your death? Zaira nodded. Yes. Carter threw up his hands. Fantastic. Love that. No notes. Zaira crossed her arms. Running won't solve anything, Carter. If I stay here, they'll hunt me down anyway. The only way to change the system is from the inside. Carter exhaled. Okay, let's say you make it back. What's your plan? Give a TED talk on the benefits of sleep. No. Zaira said, I'm going to force them to see what they've been missing. Return to Varen. Zaira's ship slipped through the darkness of space, heading straight toward the most dangerous place in the universe, her homeworld. Varen was a marvel of order and precision. No crime, no disorder, no inefficiency. Everything was calculated. Every action, every decision was made with pure logic. For centuries, they had prided themselves on their intelligence, believing that their lack of sleep made them superior. But Zaira had seen the truth. Without sleep, without dreams, they had stopped progressing. And if they continued down this path, their civilization would eventually collapse. She wasn't going to let that happen. Her ship entered orbit. Within seconds, her systems flashed a warning. Varen security forces had locked onto her signal. Unauthorized vessel, you are ordered to power down and surrender. Zaira took a deep breath. She could surrender. She could let them take her in, pretend to be obedient, try to argue her case in a controlled setting. But that would get her nowhere. They wouldn't listen. They needed proof. Which meant she had to make them see it for themselves. She diverted all power to the engines, forcing her ship to plunge toward the city below. The broadcast, the capital of Varen, was a flawless masterpiece of technology. Towering structures, machines working in perfect harmony, not a single moment wasted. And at the center of it all, the High Council chamber. Zaira didn't wait for them to drag her in. She walked straight through the doors. Gasps echoed through the hall. The council members stood in shock. She was supposed to be on the run. She was supposed to be dead. Zaira, the council leader said coldly, you have defied direct orders. You will be. No, she cut in. I won't be anything until you see this. She held up the data drive and broadcasted everything. Her experiments, the brain scans, the recorded footage of her dreams, the buried history of their own species, proving that they had once been capable of sleep and had willingly erased it. Every screen in the chamber flashed with undeniable evidence. The council sat in stunned silence, The entire planet was watching. The council's reaction. The leader's expression darkened. This is dangerous. This is the truth, Zyra said. The council members whispered amongst themselves. Some looked disturbed, others looked fascinated. Finally, one of them, a scientist like her, spoke. If this is true, then we've made a terrible mistake. The leader slammed a fist against the table. We cannot afford to be weak. Zyra took a deep breath. Weakness isn't in sleeping, leader. Weakness is refusing to change. The leader's jaw clenched. And then, a single council member closed their eyes. The entire room froze. A Veronian, voluntarily resting, testing what Zyra had shown them. Seconds passed. Then the council member gasped and jolted awake. Trembling, they looked at the others. I saw something, they whispered. Something new. Zyra's heart pounded. It had worked. And that was the moment everything changed. The aftermath. A new beginning. It didn't happen overnight. But the Veronians began experimenting with sleep again. More scientists tested it. More people reported their experiences. And the results were undeniable. Their minds changed. Their creativity expanded. For the first time in centuries, new ideas, real innovations, began to emerge. Zyra had saved her species, and all it had taken was a single dream. Final scene. The next evolution. Zyra stood on a rooftop, overlooking her city. The lights looked brighter than ever. Carter's voice crackled through her communicator. So, how does it feel? Knowing you just changed an entire civilization. She smiled. Strange, but good. He chuckled. Think you'll finally get some rest. Zyra glanced up at the stars, feeling something new stir inside her. A future that had once been impossible. I think I will, she said. And for the first time in her life, she closed her eyes, not out of duty, but out of choice. She let herself fall into sleep. And she dreamed. The beginning of something new.